Hello and welcome back to the front line, or virtual front line as is the case here. We are in Tabletop Simulator, and this workshop file should be available at the same time as these videos for anyone that wants to dive in and test our game. If you have the ability, you could also use proxies if you're already an avid tabletop gamer, and we welcome all constructive feedback. Now, we are still developing the game, although at this point we are only making minimal tweaks. If you do encounter any issues, especially around how we may have worded something in comparison to what you see here, please let us know. This first set of videos here will cover the basics, things like how a turn works, moving, shooting, with more complex videos coming later. With all that said, let's jump straight in and look at the setup. I'm not going to touch too much on this simply because there are multiple ways to set up and I want to get into the action ASAP. So I've set up a virtual 6 foot by 4 foot table here. You can go for different sizes if you wish, with varied scenery and terrain. Cover does play an essential part in the game, and we will cover this in the cover section, but for now try and get a decent balance between cover and the open table. We've quickly set up the two armies within 12 inches of opposing table edges. You can see we have the Confederation here, and opposite their enemies, the Asylumists. Each army is made up of units, and their operational data is next to the table here. And as you can see, it lists the number of models in a unit and also their threat cost. Since each side has 6 threat points worth of models, both players gain 6 command points. Feel free to build bigger or smaller armies using these points. A great thing here is you can copy units till your heart's content. Likewise, if you want a more complex setup, you can find the battlefield scenarios in the rulebook at scythopianwars.com. One final note is to make sure all models from a unit are within 2 inches of another model, as shown here. This plays a significant part in some game mechanics, so keep on top of that. Now, with that very basic setup out of the way, let's get straight into it and start looking at the commands and how a turn plays out. Commands are our way of telling units what we want them to do. As mentioned before, since this is a 6 threat point game, each player starts the turn with 6 command points to issue these commands. You can see a list of commands here, starting with simple commands like move, shoot and run, and becoming more complex as we go along. More in-depth descriptions of how they work are in the rulebook. During the turn, players alternate giving commands, also known as activating units. In this example, the first player controlling the Confederation forces decides to apply the run command to a unit of convict drones. First, they declare the command, which, as well as being polite, is also essential, as in this game your opponent has the opportunity to react to everything you do. Don't worry too much about that though, as we will be covering reacting later, and the door does swing both ways. Once a command has been carried out, the unit receives a restriction. You can see the restrictions here under the commands. Units can be given multiple commands during a single turn as long as it doesn't impose a restriction they already have, which is why the command point dice also double up as restriction trackers. Place the restriction next to the unit after its command resolves. If the unit gains another restriction, place it at the side of the previous, or you can discard the dice and flip the current dice to the combined side. Then it's over to your opponent. Both players continue to alternate until they spend all of their command points, in which case the turn ends, both players take back their points and another turn begins. Now let's look at some of the basic commands, starting with the move and run. Moving in Scythopian Wars works in a similar way to other tabletop games. First, we need to select a unit and take a look at its operational data. In this case, we have the Tin Men with a move value of 6 inches. The move value on the operational data tells us how far each model in a unit can move across the battlefield. No part of a model should move beyond this value, so measure from the closest point in a model to the destination. Since the Tin Men are moving over here, we will measure from the end of the Hellbore cannon. In Tabletop Simulator you can measure while you move, which is really helpful. After any pre-measuring, the command must be declared. Assuming your opponent does not react, you can carry out the command by moving each model up to their move value. Again, make sure they are placed within 2 inches of another model from their unit. Moving can be used to traverse cover. Terrain is passed over, and to move over scenery, like these walls here, simply deduct the height of it from the distance and place models on top or at the other side. In this example, the Tin Men's move would be reduced to 4 inches, and a model would end up on top of the wall. You must ensure all models are placed where they can stand freely. After any movement is resolved, if a model falls over, the unit takes a point of damage, and the fallen models are stunned. The run command works like move, but allows the unit to double its move value. A running unit cannot move over, through or into scenery or terrain, however, and must either go around, stop at its edge, or perform a move command instead. So that's basic movement covered. Now let's look at shooting. In this example, a group of convict drones have come face to face with a unit of Death Squad, and they want to open fire before their enemy does. First, we need to check line of sight. You can do this by crouching behind your models. We are essentially checking to make sure our models could effectively see their target. Next, we need to take a look at our operational data and have a look at our weapons. As you can see, the convicts have 3 ranged weapons, a Hellbore rifle and 2 different grenades. Next to the weapons we have their information. First is their type. The most important to take note of here is any heavy weapons, as they usually can't be used while moving, but for now we need the range value. Range tells us how far a weapon can reach, and just by glancing we can see that we are not in range with our grenades. Our weapon of choice here is the Hellbore rifle with a range of 24 inches. Since each model has one of these weapons, we need to measure to make sure they are all in weapons range. Any that are not cannot use that weapon. Now let's take a look at the rate of fire, or ROF. This tells us how many shots each weapon fires and how many dice we roll for each model in range. Now that we have a clear idea of how many shots we are about to unleash, we declare the shoot command and our target. Bar any reaction, we first need to roll to target lock. After gathering our dice, we take another look at our operational data to find our unit's resolve value. To score a successful target lock, we need to roll equal or below our resolve value. Resolve covers many aspects, from how skilled a unit is, how tough it is both mentally and physically, and how likely it is to pass specific tests. In this case, it represents the timing and accuracy needed, so a 1 is faster than a 6, and represents a closer grouping compared to a scatter. After the roll, we have scored 4 successes, with 5s or above scattering off. After removing our failures, we move on to the damage roll. To cause damage, we need to roll the remaining shots to equal or surpass the resolve value of our target. As we can see, the Death Squad have a resolve value of 4. However, before making a damage roll, we need to check our operational data one last time and look at our weapon's force. Force lowers the result we need to cause damage to our target, but as you can see, our rifle has none. No matter, even without any force, we've managed to score 2 successes. Each success causes a point of damage to the target, and with our special rule on the Hellbore rifle, piercing, we are able to add one more success to our total. When damage inflicted equals the hit point or HP value of a unit, a model is slain and removed. The Death Squad have an HP value of 2, so the closest model to the firer is slain and removed from the battlefield. If, after resolving damage, any points are left over, they become sustained damage and are placed next to the unit. A single model from that unit is also stunned and placed on its side in place if you can. Stunned models cannot use any command given to the unit. For a stunned model to get back into the fight, before it is assigned another command, it must pass a resolve test equal to or less than its resolve value on a single dice. If successful, the model returns to normal in place, or if you would prefer, you can remove a single point of sustained damage instead. With shooting now over, let's take a look at close combat. Close combat allows units in range to use their melee weapons. Here we have a unit of Horde bearing down on this unit of Tin Men. Firstly, it is essential to know that under normal circumstances, no models can move to within 2 inches of an enemy model. To get up close and personal, the Horde must charge to get into melee range. To perform a charge, use a unit's movement, which could be from a move, run, or other command that allows your models to move. Check to see if at least one of your charging models is in range of a target model. The Horde with the run command doubles their 8-inch move value to give them a 16-inch range. After a quick pre-measure, the Horde player declares the charge and its target. Assuming the target does not react to the charge, models then move within 2 inches and into range with their melee weapons. Once the movement has been resolved, all models within 1 inch can attack. You can see the Horde are armed with a single melee weapon, Twisted Metal. Melee weapons have an attack value instead of rate of fire to determine the number of dice rolled, with Twisted Metal having an attack value of 1. It is also a fast weapon, allowing it to reroll misses. Melee weapons do not need to target lock like ranged weapons, as the enemy is right on top of you. You simply need to roll to hit by rolling equal to or higher than the resolve of your target. Attacking is rolled simultaneously between all models in range, so the Tin Men also attack with their mechanical claws. In melee, force adds to the points of damage a weapon can cause, making the mechanical claw deadly with its force of 1, but first we need to resolve our hits. Only models within 1 inch are involved, so here we have 4 Tin Men against 8 Horde. Both players roll at the same time and discard failures. The Horde player, making use of their fast weapons, managed to score 6 hits in total, and the Tin Men managed to score 3. First, both players discard their failures and declare their hits. In melee, weapons and bodies clash together, so hits are resolved against each other before damage is caused. In this case, the Tin Men cannot match their opponent, and the extra hits pass through without opposition, causing a point of damage plus an additional point of damage per force value, for a total of 3 points of damage. The other hits smash into each other. Weapons with the same force would block each other, but since the mechanical claw has a force of 1 compared to the Twisted Metal 0, the extra damage passes through, causing 3 points of damage to the Horde. Since they only have 1 hit point, 3 Horde are slain and removed from the battlefield. Tin Men have 2 hit points, therefore 1 is slain with the additional sustained damage stunning another model. For now, melee is over, but the units are locked in a life and death struggle. As long as models are within 1 inch, after every activation, even those outside these units, melee takes place, until all combatants are slain or have felled their enemy. With that brief look into close combat, we now need to go over to cover. Cover plays an essential part in keeping your units alive by granting bonuses to units using it. There are 2 types of cover: terrain, which forms part of the floor like craters and rubble, and scenery, which is made up of structures that rise out of the floor like walls and ruins. For units to use terrain, they need to be partially stood on it, like the convict drones here. Each model can be seen with its base partially on top of the rubble. Scenery, in comparison, must be within 2 inches, and be between attackers and this model. Models using cover gain a bonus to their resolve, as long as they are not moving, +1 for terrain and +2 for scenery. This bonus makes units far harder to hurt. Noticing their enemy crouched behind the wall, the convict drones open fire with their Hellbore rifles, pitted against the resolve of the Death Squad. The Death Squad stay put, with their resolve increased from 4 to 6 as weapons smash into the wall. In addition, they react with the Defend command. This command can be used by a unit under fire, as long as all models are in cover. Defend reduces the resolve value of the attacker by the cover bonus when it makes its target lock. The convict drones, who originally needed a 4 or less, now find their reactions and accuracy impeded, as the scenery bonus causes them to need a 2 or below to target lock. Cover can also be used tactically to disrupt units and charges. Since running cannot pass into, through or over cover, a unit can keep its distance from a would-be attacker intent on charging. It can also be used to funnel enemies as they are forced to stay outside cover. Be careful, however. The enemy could always use the move command or opt to overrun, a costly yet effective command, which allows it to ignore this hindrance, so always be vigilant and watch your opponent's restrictions. For the final video of this set, we move on to perhaps one of the most important aspects of the game: reacting. As mentioned in previous clips, players have the opportunity to react to their opponent. During a turn, when a player performs a command, the opposition can use their activation to counter that command. In this example, a unit of recon drones has been activated and they target a nearby Heavy's spider. The opposition decides to react and assigns the shoot command to the Heavy spider, and both units become involved in a firefight. Be aware that the reaction to a command that targets your units must be resolved against the unit that initiated it. Commands that don't have a target, such as move, can also be reacted to, but only by using the snap command. Depending on which command you react with, there can be many different outcomes. When both units opt to shoot, units resolve their shots at the same time. Damage is resolved for both units before losses are taken, with one exception. When rolling to target lock, the recon drones gain the initiative. Any target lock rolls of 1 are immediately resolved, and if they cause a point of damage, can kill or stun models before they get to shoot. Another way you could react would be to charge at the firing enemy and preventing them from shooting, as ranged weapons can't be used within 1 inch of enemy models. You could even choose to run, getting out of range or line of sight, removing the threat entirely. There are even commands specifically for reacting. The last thing to note is that reacting is classed as your activation, and therefore you would sacrifice your next command. A skillful enemy might try to keep you reacting, to deny your progress with other units, so keep your wits about you. And with that, I will end this first set of videos. I have tried to keep it short and simple, and hopefully by watching these you will get some idea of the basics. Again, you can get more information from our rulebook and more information on what we're wanting to do with this game from Scythopianwars.com or our Facebook page. In future I will be uploading more videos like this, looking deeper into the commands, special rules, tactics on what you can do on the battlefield, and also more information on the units. Thank you very much for watching, and back to the barracks.